Hey everyone, Beyond TCG back again with another episode of the Pokemon Horizon Rising set review. Today we're going to be going over the Psychic and Fighting type Pokemon. So before getting into that, I realized I forgot to mention this in my other episodes, but these cards were made at the pokecardmaker.net/creator. Not a sponsorship or anything, just wanted to shout out this awesome site that allowed me to make these cards and demo them to everyone. I used to be making them in just awful editors, and now they get to be professionally made here, so just a big thank you to that site, and check them out if you want to make any of your own custom Pokemon cards. Okay, so what are we going to see today? The really only different one is where there's going to be one non-evolving Psychic Basic and two non-evolving Fighting Basics. If you wonder why the numbers are so inconsistent in between some types, you'll see later on that Pokemon got moved around based on some evolutions that I'll shout out in future episodes. But naturally, we'll also be seeing four basics that evolve into a stage one, as well as the stage one they evolve into, and two basics that have a stage one and a powerful stage two that should hopefully be game winning. All right, let's recap again, as always. For our Psychic Pokemon, they're very good at putting damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon. That includes the ghost types that inhabit these purple cards, and you'll see that I actually have a poison type in here as well. I kind of will put poison in either darkness or psychic cards, depending on how I really feel, honestly. And they also have some anti-meta attacks and abilities. So anti-meta, you'll see a good example with one of the early Pokemon that evolves into a stage one, but basically kind of disruptive ways. Not quite like the normal version where it targets some maybe offhand strategies, but you'll see what I mean when we get into the cards. So let's go right in. All right, let's start off with our first non-evolving basic here. We have Mewtwo with 120 HP. For Psychic Colorless as the Psyshock attack that deals 100 damage, and this attack ignores the abilities of the opposing Pokemon. But most importantly is its ability Mind Lock. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to your bench, you may put a Void counter on an opposing Pokemon. As long as this Pokemon is in play, Pokemon with Void counters have no abilities. Mewtwo is just good. I don't know what else to say. I know everyone's going to play it, and it's a pretty important card for shutting down some sort of ability that's probably maybe stopping your deck, or it's just causing your opponent's deck to be too powerful. I expect many people to be running 1 to 4 of these in their deck just to have around. Who knows? But it's a great card, and look forward to using it. All right, now we go into our basics. Starting off here, we have Drowsy with 80 HP. Psychic with the Imprison attack. Not only does it deal 20 damage, but the first item card your opponent plays during their turn has no effect. So this is going into that anti-meta part that I was talking about that kind of disrupts the opponent's plays. And then Psychic Colorless deals the Psychic attack for 50 damage. And it evolves into Hypno here with 120 HP. Similar case, Psychic Lock, the first item your opponent plays during the next turn has no effect. It does 30 damage this time. And then also has the Sleepy Punch attack, Psychic Colorless, 90 damage. The opposing Pokemon is now asleep. So both of these just good anti-meta cards to stop your opponent from just like comboing off for 20 minutes by playing a million item cards. This at least makes them have to think about what they're going to throw out, or maybe just not play items whatsoever during their turn. All right, for our next evolving basic, we have Mischievous here with 40 HP. The Spectral Presence, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to your bench, put a damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And then Psychic Spite, put a damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon. This card, you've seen it a bunch of times before. You've seen it on Galarian Zigzagoon, most recently in Sword and Shield. I think there was a Zubat in the past that did this. This is just a good staple effect. I think it opens up a lot of strategies, and especially here in Psychic. And it evolves into Mismagius with 110 HP for a single Psychic that has the Ghost Orbs attack. Put 4 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And next up, Psychic Colorless Spectre Hands. Put damage counters on an opposing Pokemon equal to the amount of damage counters on another of their Pokemon. So here you can use the Ghost Orbs attack. Think of using that twice and getting 8 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And then you can Spectre Hands and then put 8 damage counters on another of their Pokemon. So just a great payoff for making a damage counters deck like this. Up next, we start with those poison Pokemon that I was talking about with Gulpin here. 70 HP, Psychic, Poison Spit. The opposing Pokemon is now poisoned. Put 3 damage counters on that Pokemon during Pokemon Checkup. So right now I know it's just really easy to get cured of poison, and so I think 3 is the appropriate amount of damage counters with the HP and just making it seem intimidating like it should. But it evolves into a very intimidating card, Swalot, with 120 HP, as the ability Toxic Filter, prevent all effects of damage dealt to this Pokemon by poisoned Pokemon, and conveniently, in case they aren't already poisoned, Psychic Poison Spit deals 30 damage and the opposing Pokemon is now poisoned. So I think this is just a great reward card for playing any kind of status deck that's specifically looking for poison. You can just keep Swallow in play and keep chipping away at their HP until they're knocked out. Just a very cool payoff card. Up next, we have Esper here with 70 HP. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I pat myself on the back a little bit for this one. I thought this was clever. Psychic Future Sight, put 4 damage counters on one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. If you get it, because the benched ones come out later, it's the future, and I'm just gonna move on. Next up, we have Meowstic here with 100 HP. It has Psychic Mind Shards, put a damage counter on each Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's. So keep in mind it puts it on yours as well. However, you don't really care because it also has Psychic Transfer. You may move all damage counters on each of your Pokemon to your opponent's active Pokemon. I mean, that's pretty cool. Combos with itself, you're already getting a bunch of damage counters on them, and then as long as Meowstic's around, you can just, in a sense, kind of heal all your Pokemon and then put it on the opponent's active Pokemon. So just a really strong payoff for the damage counter deck. All right, now for our Stage 2 evolution, starting off with Duskull here with 50 HP. It has the Spirit Away ability. If this Pokemon is knocked out, your opponent cannot take any prize cards for it. And then Psychic Deep Sleep, 10 damage, and the opposing Pokemon is now asleep. You know, this is just kind of the classic how you want your basics here. This gets knocked out early. Your opponent doesn't get a prize card. You don't feel so bad for losing it so early in the game. It evolves into Dusclops here with 140 HP. For a single Psychic, it has Disable, 30 damage, name an attack during your opponent's next turn. They cannot use this use the named attack. I just want to focus on this one for 5 seconds. This is meant for, you've seen many attacks that are like, oh, your opponent can't use this attack during the next turn. But if they play double switch, they can actually, by the rules, attack again. This is made to prevent that interaction from ever happening. So you literally say, like, I don't know, Thunderbolt, they can't use Thunderbolt. And then doesn't matter how many times they switch in or out, Thunderbolt can't happen. So this is just a true disable. And finally, it evolves into Dusknoir here with 220 HP. For Psychic Colorless, Legion of Ghosts, put up to 10 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. Really simple effect, but if you've played the Sableye from Lost Origin, you realize how great it is that you could just kind of choose and spread damage counters like this. And this one has no restriction, so just a great payoff there. And up next for our second Stage 2, we start off with Solosis here with 70 HP. It has, for Psychic, the Cell Splitting attack, returning in a number of Solosis from your discard pile to your bench. So if they accidentally get knocked out early or you discarded them or something like that, easy way to get them back and make sure you can keep evolving as you need. It evolves into Duosion here with 120 HP. It has a second attack of Psychic Colorless, Psychic Blast deals 90 damage, but most importantly, Psychic Colorless Recover, heal all damage from this Pokemon. So as long as your opponent is not one-shotting it, you can keep it alive and make sure that you can get it to Reuniclus here. So let's see how good the payoff is with Reuniclus. 170 HP, and then Psychic Psyshock, put a damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon. And then Psychic Colorless, Psychic Collapse. If all of your opponent's Pokemon have damage counters on them, the opposing Pokemon is knocked out. So not only does he set up an instant KO with his second attack, but he's just a big reward for using these damage counter decks overall, and just an awesome card to look forward to playing. All right, next we're going to take a look at our fighting Pokemon. Obviously, they encompass in the video games fighting, rock, and ground. To start, they care about having Pokemon tools attached to them. So specifically the ones that we're fighting in the video game will get some rewards off of that, or they'll kind of manipulate how the tools work. They also have a lot of powerful one-hit attacks. Naturally, with fighting types, you try and do these one-hit KOs. But then also specifically for ground-type Pokemon, they're going to have a lot of these spread moves like Earthquake attacks that damage benched Pokemon on both sides. So you'll see some cool examples of that. All right, let's hop into some cards. All right, starting with our non-evolving basics, we have Sudowoodo here with 100 HP. You probably recognize this one from the first episode about the set. Colorless, double draw 2 cards. And then Fighting Colorless Counter. This attacks deals 2 times the number of damage dealt to this Pokemon during your opponent's last turn. So just a very safe card that lets you draw cards, and then maybe later in the game you can use a counter that deals some big damage in return. Next up, we also have Buzzwole with 110 HP. It's an Ultra Beast, keep that in mind. Fighting, 1 punch, 70. This attack can only be used if it would knock out your opponent's active Pokemon. And then Fighting Colorless Rapid Punches. This attack does 30 damage times the number of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So again, just another good example of a non-evolving basic here. You're not going to build your deck around it, but it might be nice to have it around to sneak in and do some 70 damage early on, or the Rapid Punches in case your opponent's doing some energy acceleration deck. And it's an Ultra Beast. You know, that may matter for some strategies later. Wink, wink, hint, hint. All right, next, let's start off with some evolutions. We start with Vampy here with 70 HP. For just a single fighting energy, battle hardened. This attack does 10 damage times the number of damage counters on this Pokemon. So just, you know, classic basic that can end up doing 60 damage for single fighting, which is pretty good for a basic. And it evolves into Donphan here with 120 HP. It has the Meteor Charge for a single fighting energy. Even though it does 30 damage to itself, it's dealing 100 damage, which is a ton. And then, of course, Fighting Colorless Hardened Tackle. This attack does 30 damage times the number of damage counters on this Pokemon. So early on, you can just keep Meteor charging and doing a bunch of damage. And then even though Donphan has injured himself greatly, you can do a Hardened Tackle to do a chunk of damage. All right, next up we have Meditite here with 70 HP. For single fighting, it has Force Palm. This attack does 20 damage plus 20 more damage for each energy more on your opponent's active Pokemon than this Pokemon. And also Fighting Colorless Jump Kick 90. So again, if your opponent's doing some sort of energy acceleration deck and has a bunch of energy, Meditite ends up doing extra damage as kind of a punishing attack. And it evolves into Medicham here with 120 HP. Very interesting card. First off, it has a Karate Close ability. If this Pokemon will be knocked out while it has a Pokemon tool attached, you may discard the attached tool instead, and this Pokemon stays in play. And your opponent still takes a prize card for it, but allows you to kind of keep that momentum going, not lose any cards, or have to like get another basic and evolve again. And it comes with Fighting Colorless, High Jump Kick, 120 damage. If this attack's damage would be reduced, this attack does nothing. So that's kind of a shout out to, you know, how you kind of keep going and crashing if your opponent uses Protect or something like that. But still a cool card. It's able to stay in play really easily by having some tools around, and does a decent amount of damage with its attack. All right, for our next evolution, we're going to start with Hippopotas here with 100 HP. Fighting Sand Trap, 30 damage. The opposing Pokemon cannot retreat during their next turn. And then Fighting Colorless Desert Wave. This attack does 30 damage plus 30 more damage if the opposing Pokemon is a basic Pokemon. Again, just another kind of classic basic here. I think most importantly, you can kind of stop them from retreating or getting out. But it evolves into a card you should already be familiar with, Hippowdon here with 140 HP. And Fighting Colorless Terrible Tremors does 100 damage. It also does 20 damage to each of your bench Pokemon, but it also does 30 more damage over that 100 for each Pokemon dealt this way. So again, this is an example of that quaking effect where you're kind of hurting your own Pokemon in the earthquake. However, the attack becomes stronger through that. So I'm sure you can think of some cool strategies like keeping Donphans on the bench and then powering them up through taking damage through this attack. All right, next up for our evolutions, we start with Mienfoo here with 60 HP. It has the Quick Jab ability. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, you may deal 10 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. And as Colorless Swift Punch deals 30. So yes, that does mean you could switch in Mienfoo, deal the 10 damage through its ability, and then maybe even switch it out. Just generally good. And it evolves into Mienshao here with 100 HP. And does a classic Mienshao move of Fighting, Twisting Uppercut, 140, and then shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached back into your deck. A lot of times with Mienshao, it always seems to be like a hit and run card, and I think if you're going to have to lose that much card advantage, I mean, that's 4 cards you're shuffling back into your deck, you should be doing like 140 damage or something like that. All right, let's hop into our triple evolutions. We've got our classic Machop here with 80 HP. Fighting Mega Punch deals 50 damage, but has the Pumped Up ability. Once during your turn, you may shuffle an energy attached to one of your Pokemon into your deck. Then you may search your deck for fighting energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon. Shuffle your deck. So just a really cool energy acceleration ability. What's also kind of notable about it is if you've ever played fighting in the TCG, you probably noticed that they don't have too many moves with colorless in them. There's always like very strict fighting costs, and this is meant to help you fix that. And of course, you can play kind of clever and maybe you have some energy accelerator of a different type, and then you use Machop to turn it all into fighting to, abuse that ability. So many tools that you can use here on this basic Pokemon. It naturally evolves into Machoke here with 140 HP. It has Fighting, Unstoppable Punch, 90 damage. This attack ignores the abilities of your opponent's Pokemon. And then Fighting Colorless, Final Strike. If this Pokemon has 10 HP remaining, knock out your opponent's active Pokemon. How you're going to get 100 or 13 damage counters on it, I don't know. That's up to you to find out. But just something to note that you could suddenly swing and immediately knock an opponent's Pokemon out. And speaking of one-hit KOs, Machamp here has 210 HP. For fighting colorless, Reclaimed Throne, attach a Pokemon tool from your discard pile to this Pokemon, which seems like a lot for that expensive attack. However, Champion's Punch is fighting. This attack can only be used if this Pokemon has a Pokemon tool attached. Knock out the opposing Pokemon. It's just a straight KO, just like Reuniclus. As you can see, the theme with both of these types here right now. Uh, Reclaim Throne, you're going to use it in a pinch, but most importantly, you have 3 fighting energy. You just attach a tool and then you go, all right, I don't care if it's got 500 HP, it's gone. So look forward to seeing people make some awesome decks out of that. And finally, let's go into the final stage 2 of today, starting with Roggenrola here with 50 HP. It has Rocky Edge, fighting 20 damage, but Stealth Rocks. If you've ever played competitive Pokemon, you know this attack. Whenever an opponent's Pokemon becomes an active Pokemon, put a damage counter on that Pokemon. It evolves into Boldor here with 130 HP. Fighting Colorless Rock Blast does 50, and then extra Stealth Rocks. Whenever an opposing Pokemon becomes an active Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. And finally, I think you can guess where Gigalith is going. 220 HP, max Stealth Rocks. Whenever an opposing Pokemon becomes an active Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. But it also has a very good attack in Earthquake for fighting, colorless. This attack deals 100 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon. Yes, just complete one-sided 100 damage there. And obviously, these Pokemon are great for just sitting there and then punishing, switching in and switching out, just like Stealth Rocks does normally. All right, well, that's all the cards of today's episode. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Again, make sure to take a look at that website and let me know what your favorite cards are or any deck speculations you have. Tune in. Next episode is going to be the Metal and Darkness Pokemon. I look forward to seeing you then, and I've been Beyond TCG.